Well, hi guys and girls, Em again. Back onto this build. We've got two more bits to make. The last sheet of drawings are these two stems. Now, there are a couple of ways we could do this. I'm going to machine them at 01, which is what it says. Drill rod, 115 chrome vanadium 3. Whatever you want to call it. Silver steel in Australia probably is a more common name for it, but that's what I'm going to make them out of. I've got a bit of 12mm there that should be really good for that. And I'm just going to leave them unhardened. They've got a thread on them. We could make them in two pieces. We could make this piece through here and then a bush that goes over the top and Loctite it in place afterwards. Probably wouldn't be too shabby actually. It's probably not a bad way to do it. But what we need, the important thing here for me is getting this taper concentric with this. So also because we're making two of them, I don't want to set this taper up twice to do it. That's the sad and unhappy truth, is that if I've got to set it up twice, they'll be different. So what I really want to do is do them last so I don't have to set my compound round straight again to do the rest. I think at this point what I'm going to probably do is machine this down here to this diameter, which is 10mm, and then I'm going to machine this here to 5 and put a thread on it. And then I think what I'll do is part them off, put them in a collet and turn them around and machine this end, put this in a collet and put the tapers on them. So that way I can do them in batches, so I can do the two of these down to size with the thread on them. We can do these two the same size, and then we can do two tapers the same. And hopefully they'll all be concentric. That's the theory. So these are the last bits to do, and they've got to fit that taper in there, and they've got to fit that taper there, and they've got to fit this hole in here. So it shouldn't be too difficult. The thread's got to fit this nut. We got the 32.5mm long and 10mm diameter. So we want 20 stick out plus 32.5 minus the 6, which is this thickness here, is 26.5 to here, plus, I guess, plus part off. So we need to really stick out the 32.5mm is my thought process. We need to stick all that out. So I'm going to grip them here, machine this down to size, and machine this down to size. Is everyone happy? I think I've got that straight in my mind. Let's go to the lathe and do that. 01 steel. That's not too far out there. And next job, I guess, is to machine the rest down to 5 at 20mm long. So if we just touch off on here, we use a hand wheel as a DRO. That should be 20mm long. down to about 6.85, something like that. So I've got that down to size. Here's a tip, useful tip, make sure these fit reasonably well. They snug up on the taper, but make sure they fit and are a good sliding fit before you part this off and turn it round, because then you're kind of screwed, because you can't really fix this afterwards, I don't think. So that's a pretty good fit for both parts. I actually discovered that the drill I was using to cut the holes was a fraction undersized, and I ran a reamer through them just to clean everything up. Now, what's the best way to cut this thread? It needs to be 13 millimeters long. It probably doesn't matter if it's got a land in the back and we screw cut it. I don't like to do that because there's a fair bit of pressure on that and it sticks out. I'm just going to cut it with a die, I think, and opt out there. So I've got a die stock. If you can find a decent one, a metal one, this needs a do up, and I might do that. I'd like to set it up and machine the back of it square, and replace the screws, give it a coat of paint, tidy it up. This is a P&N, it's an Australian one. But make sure when your die sits down in, everything's nice and clean and it sits down on the machine face in the back nicely. If it doesn't, you'll end up with a crooked thread or a thread that cuts oversized. It's got an open end or an end with a taper on it and an end without. You should really cut on something like this from the end with the, you should cut on everything with the end with the taper on it. There's a bit less cutting force and less likely to break, especially in hard steel. I've got a plate for this, which is a genuine launch part. I'm a bit sort of lucky to get that. It was in a box with a heap of other stuff that I got from the other side of the world, come from Holland or Poland or somewhere. A little bit of decent cutting oil on there, whether you use Rocold or Tap Magic or whatever, that's the stuff. Now we want to go until this gap here is about 7 millimeters. Because there's a bit of a taper on the end of the thread, we probably want to go till it's 6 millimeters. So I've got a bit of 1/4 inch tool steel here. I'm just going to go until that just fits in the gap there. Back it off so there's no chip, and slip it back up again. So it still needs a little bit more. And gauge block's all right for this too, but you don't really want to drop your gauge block in the bottom of your lathe too many times. That's pretty close there. There we go. I think that's a pretty reasonable thread. Clean up with a good old abrasive sponge. Make sure there's a nice little neat taper on the end there. And clean all the chips out. We'll make sure everything works. Next job is to part this off at length. So I'm just going to slide this out and part it off. And we'll turn it around in a collet and machine the other end then. So I'll get 2 of these parted off on the bench and we'll come back and have a bit of a look at do another end. So I've got two of these, that one and that one, and the next job I've set them up in a collet. I've set this one up in a collet, and the secret to these collets and to any collets really is to make sure everything's clean. If you're using draw tube or drawbar collets, pull everything out and clean it before you put them all back together. It's well worth the trouble. If you've got a little brush to clean the end of the, or pipe cleaner to clean the end of the internal drawbar, if it's these or 5Cs, really smart idea. And a soft cloth, get everything nice and clean. So there's another useful tip. Always do that. You see too many collets that have been chewed up because someone's put them together with a chip inside the thread. Now the threaded portion here is 20mm long, and the whole overall thing has got to be 32.5, which means that this part here has got to be 12.5 long. So first thing I'm going to do is trim them both off to 12.5. And I'm not even sure this is a particularly critical measurement. However, if we make this one down to pretty close and leave our compound set, then we should very easily be able to trim the other one to exactly the same length. And we're still at parting off speed. This is 01, so I'm turning it at what, 14, about 1450, something like that, which probably isn't fast enough, but it's as fast as this lathe goes. I'm going to call that pretty good. Two millimeters, 4 millimeters, 6 millimeters in there, and the right diameter to fit. We're still 5.1. I was a little bit cautious that time. That's about 0.02 to 0.03 under, which is probably where we need to be. That's a beautiful fit. That's really sweet. So there we go. That's the first one done. Still need to put a taper on him, but they're getting close. And that's well within tolerance really for a Loctite fit. So there's only one operation to do, and that's to put the taper on them. I try not to muck this up too often. because while it's not difficult to put back, it's a job that takes a little bit of concentration. Of course, the really good way to do this would be to set it up with a sine bar. We've got too much deflection in this to set it to the part. My general way of doing this is to clean everything here. Generally how I do this probably is to set this up with a Z square on the back here, and or a Z square if you're American, which is a Stan Sinkowski amazing tool, and two 1, 2, 3 blocks. When I've got everything feeling pretty snug and nice, just tighten it up. I guess any sort of square will work. However, it's very nice to have a square with a step on it so you can sit it on there and you know it's going to be right. Just make sure everything's snug. Now, the problem's going to be here is that we won't get in here close enough. And that looks pretty good to me. Make a note of that setting on the cross slide, and that looks pretty jolly good. We're not taking a lot off with the abrasive, we're just changing the finish from being a matte finish, or the way the light hits it, from being a matte finish through to being a shiny finish. So really it's just a matter of reflection to give us that really classy, nice look. So that part's finished. So hopefully these are identical and they look like they're pretty jolly close. Let's have a look over at the bench. Pretty nice. So this is what we got. It's two of these. They go in there like that. And I spent a bit of time deburring these holes because these do have a slight chamfer or a radius on this corner. There's 0.4mm, which I think is the insert radius. Rather than undercut them, I've just put a little bit of a chamfer or a deburr on the inside corner here. And that sits them in there nicely. If you don't do that, they've got a bit of a gap in them. So that looks pretty good. It's nice and smooth and pretty nice and neat. Really pleased with that. And they've got a good thread on them. If we close this up here like this, and put a washer and a nut on them, they lock in really nice. And they should have just the right amount of thread sitting below the nut to be tactile and nice as well. So pretty pleased with them. And that's all the bits. Two of those, one of those and one of those, one of those, and two of those and one of them. That's a week's work. try not to think of it like that. It is a bit of an investment in the workshop, I think. I have to work out how to finish this, and there's probably going to be another video about this. Whether we make a box for them or what we do, I'm not sure. I'm tossing up whether to blue them or not. That's another thing. We could blue, probably, don't know. I'm not sure how these will blue up. I know these knobs and this nut will come up really nice, and maybe we could leave the rest in a silver, or maybe we could blue it off. Not really sure about that. Maybe it's good enough as it is. Maybe all we need is a box. Anyone got any thoughts about that? Anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Really appreciate new subscribers that have come on board since I started this series. That's awesome. And if you're watching this on Patreon, you guys know who you are and you're awesome. Big thanks and a shout out to you guys. It makes jobs like this possible. And this has been a really sweet little project, and I've really enjoyed it. It seems a pity to finish these in any way, other than what it already is. So we're still thinking about that. We might just oil them up. But there could be another video, I think. Don't know how exciting it'll be. And that's about all I've got, so I'm calling this video done. More soon, guys and girls, and be kind to each other.